So, making a plan for investigative journalists. Okay. So, from asking yourself questions and probing sources to pitching a story. Pitching a story means this is the story I'm going to do, right? To editors. And preparing a budget. Because there is something you'll be spending. Eh? You have to prepare a budget. You're not going to be doing it for free. Okay. Yeah, what? And the planning is imperative for any investigative reporting project. It's a project. It's not that you just be. Yeah? So it will also introduce how to recognize reliable sources and shape the story's details into interesting narrative through evidence-based reporting. Okay. Um, how to plan an investigation? You should know that you cannot move, and you can't. You cannot move from an idea straight into an investigation. Your idea is just starting point. Eh? So there is the idea, here is the investigation. You cannot just have an idea, let's go investigate. No. Your idea is just a starting point. Because investigative stories carry a heavy social responsibility and various legal risks. Yeah. You must be sure your reporting is thorough, accurate, and comprehensive as possible. Because media work is a team effort that requires significant resources. You also need to ensure that there is a good communication with colleagues and access to the materials needed to carry out the project. For these reasons, you need to carefully plan how each stage of the story will unfold. So, you will not be doing it alone, you involve others. Teamwork. Um, where your idea originated will be one factor that shapes your work plan. Where did you get the idea? Okay. If the idea came from your own observations, for example, okay, or from anecdotal evidence, you need to be sure that these individual experiences really represent a broader trend or issue. Maybe it's not just one place that way you saw it happening. You see, does this really is it this widespread or just only here? Okay. So it can come from an observation or anecdotal. Anecdotal, that's somebody told you, eh? Yeah, evidence. It can be a tip. For a tip, you must check its authenticity, reliability, and possible motives of the source, even before you move forward. But if you find that your sources are impeccable, that they are believable, and the initial facts irrefutable, the first stage of this process is turning your story idea into a tightly focused hypothesis or question that your investigation will prove, disprove, or answer. What we mean is try to say, um, you put it in the what is hypothesis? You put as you predict, you make a prediction. You can predict, but then go to collect evidence related to what you have predicted. You can predict that there is high corruption in the civil service, among civil service. So you are now you're not saying that's a complete story. Now you're going out there to collect data to prove, or you may not have evidence to prove that. Enough evidence. If you don't have enough evidence to prove that one, the story has failed, or has changed. Because if, for example, you say if there is high corruption among, you might find that there isn't. In fact, corruption has disappeared. It is still a story. Don't be disappointed personally. It's not a personal. It's a social responsibility. not you to gain. Okay. However, this initial stage um, of the plan is never set in stone, meaning it needs to have sufficient flexibility to cope with new information and new directions that your investigations may uncover. So you can change. Don't say because I've made a plan, then I can't change it. You can change it. Okay? There can be new information that's coming in and the new direction. Okay? Change. Like very often a story will begin with a broad idea that will allow for investigating a wide and probably unmanageable universe of topics. Okay. We have, for example, here Thomas Oliver, investigative journalist and former managing editor of the American newspaper Atlanta Journal Constitution. Note: projects tend to become all inclusive and sometimes exhaustively cover, eh? Sometimes exhaustively cover everything one ever wanted to know about a subject. This is a weakness, not a strength. A good technique for developing and refining this idea is to write your way into it. Try to compose a story summary, a paragraph that describes what the final story will look like. Okay. This is a way of opening new minds to the story and sketching out a range of possible explanations. So it also helps you to see whether the story is best framed from a local angle or whether it has regional or national implications. At this stage, consider the following questions. Okay. So at this stage, we have to consider the following questions. At this stage, what I mean, when you're investigating, you have to ask yourself certain questions. For example, what has been happening? Why should your readers care about what you're writing? Who are the actors involved? How did they do it? What are the consequences? Okay. So it's important to know, is there in the background what you're doing? Or is it happening for the first time? Okay. And why is it important for your readers to care? Okay. Who are the actors involved? How did they do it? Um, what are the consequences? Okay. Um, what went wrong? How did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? What are the consequences? You should also know what is the news, what's the story, what are keywords associated with the story. What is the rationale? Who will benefit or suffer if the story is published? Will the story facilitate debate about societal values or behavior? Will the story highlight faulty systems or processes? Okay. So answering these questions will help you think about how a story can be told and identify the direction of the investigation. So you have to ask these questions to yourself, right? Uh-huh. These are key questions, very important. And once you have, you don't have to get answers as such. What you are getting is you're trying to value it. You're putting on a scale. You're putting on a value scale. You're trying to see, is it really worth publishing? Eh? Has it been happening before? From the idea to a hypothesis, meaning from when you have an idea, first step, you have to bring a hypothesis. That is a prediction. So after thinking about a story idea more carefully, you must turn their initial thoughts into a specific hypothesis or a question that hypothesis or question that your story can answer. A hypothesis or question that's a short or long, one sentence or two sentences, helps you to decide what evidence would be relevant and what constitutes proof. Okay. Uh, for example, um, in the case of a breakout of a diarrhea, that water services have been privatized. You could frame the story about how people find water when they cannot buy it from a private company. But here, for example, you can also investigate why we have cholera, isn't it? It started during the dry season. What is here? You can question the health system. What has changed? Eh? What has changed in the health system? And you can also um, have to say, uh, has there been corruption in the health system? Are they employing? Is this change of a minister, change of a PS, or change of management in the ministry? What's happening? Okay, okay. So after coming up with a concrete idea, creating a hypothesis, source mapping is the next stage. The next stage of the investigation, the reporting process. You will need to identify who the key actors in the story are and any documents that record their actions. Many public records show what government, hospital staff, corporations, mafia, and corrupt politicians have been up to. Okay, so various sources can help prove your assumptions and either verify or refute your original hypothesis. For every detail, always use the two source principle, which means you rely on two independent sources to confirm the same information. So others, one source tells you this one, have another one to confirm that information. So these sources will serve as background experts. Make sure to add their contact details into your address book. So these sources can either be primary or secondary sources. Okay. So these are sources that provide first-hand evidence or relate direct experience. For example, a patient who bought drugs from a nurse via hospital backdoor would be a primary source who is able to lend the specific experience of stealing drug preference, isn't it? But is not able to attest to what nurses are generally doing. He will tell or she will tell you, but do not be ready to provide that information to attest, to be used, to be quoted in the story. That's a primary source. Okay. A foreman at the water plant who was told to do purity checks once a month instead of once a week is also a primary source. So is a bank statement or cabinet minister that clearly shows payment from an international arms government. Okay. Primary sources, as long as you have verified them and made sure they are authentic, are the most valuable sources because they provide direct proof. Often they are also the hardest to find. Very hard to find those. People with relevant experience may be reluctant to go on the record because they fear being victimized. And documents like bank statements or hospital records may be kept confidential or even restricted by private laws. Okay. Secondary sources include all kinds of published materials, including organizational reports and second-hand accounts. I had a friend who secondary sources are valuable, particularly for establishing context and background, helping to explain issues and providing leads to good contacts. However, any evidence you draw from them, as well as the person they originated from, should be checked and verified. Okay. What else? Let's move to. Oh, sorry, not my mouse. Um, you should also. We are also looking at um, each story idea can generate multiple hypotheses. There cannot be only one hypothesis or directions for final story. For example, there can be two hypotheses for the poverty, privatization, and waterborne disease story. A, privatization has made buying water too expensive for the poor, so they draw water from unhealthy free sources, leading to an epidemic. Here, can we say maybe since it can be interesting that when water bills or the way water rates have risen, most people cannot afford the water, so they're buying from bad sources, and as such, it has led to cholera. You can track that one. Find out from when did water when when did the rates water rise? Okay, or you can say private water companies are cutting corners and standards of water safety are failing, leading to an epidemic. You see that one, eh? So you say, yes, we have a cholera. Is it because of people cannot afford good water, eh? Cannot afford potable water. Okay. But you need to evaluate these hypotheses critically. What assumptions they rest on? And are you certain of the validity of the assumptions? Well, these hypotheses rest on untested assumptions about the source of the epidemic. Assume that unofficial water suppliers are at fault. Okay. B assumes that the water plant is careless about standards. You may actually need to look at both possibilities because both these hypotheses rest on a deeper question. Where did the epidemic start, for example? Mhm. So this is crucial. Where the epidemic started from. Why do we have cholera with the water? So you can see that from the cholera case, you can start investigating already. When did it start? Where did it start? And what type of sources of water are there? And you find that maybe the sources of water in those places are from those wells. What is the sanitary places? Sanitation. Okay. So, but you can also have another hypothesis from there. The recent epidemic of waterborne disease in this community, municipality, either originated from the privatized water supply or from unofficial water sources. So the other hypothesis allows you to get back to your story outline rather, and tailor an investigation that is clear and balanced. So there has just been a major epidemic of waterborne disease in X municipality where water is privatized. There has been a major epidemic of waterborne diarrhea in X municipality, for example, in the Longwe, where water is privatized. But here, where we don't have privatized water, but we're looking at water rights, isn't it? Okay. So the story we try to find out how that epidemic started. Was it because people cannot afford to buy private water, or is it because what because of people cannot afford to buy or to go and buy those water from those kiosks providers, isn't it? Yeah. City Council plus six. We know it's a national wide problem in Malawi. You can just look at maybe in the city, isn't it? Cities. You can choose the longer Blantyre. Okay. Um, the so we will be getting this information both from secondary and primary sources. So you can differentiate between three types of source material as well. They can be human, paper, and digital. That's the word, right? Um, so number one, human sources. Many sources fall into this category. Direct role players. Direct role players. That is, these are human categories. Eyewitnesses, experts, and interested parties. Eager and reluctant. Be sure you understand the status, credentials, and motivation of the people you approach. If you are working on the water privatization story like that, right? Or the quarter story, the representatives of an privatization organization will be those who, if the water body is privatized, that is, but you also those who are lobbying against high water bills, right? High water rates. But that information will come from a particular position and representatives of organization, which are often speaking on behalf of much larger groups of people. So when they summarize group views, they may organize and aid community opinion in ways that change or exclude important aspects. So sometimes quite unintentional. So therefore, you need to seek a wide variety of viewpoints. Okay? If you're speaking to people from a community, be sure your selection of voices is demographically representative. Women, men, young, old, from various income and interest groups. Say you're in 36, Talk to, no, talk to people, different people. So human voices give your story authenticity and make it come alive. For that reason, never to base a story on paper or electronic sources alone. No. So even if you have evidence on paper, somebody written somewhere on the web, but also give it a human face. Number two, paper sources. These can include books, newspapers, and magazines. Let me answer this one. Okay. So paper sources for investigative journalism. These can include books, newspapers, and magazines, official records, and business documents such as contracts and bank statements. This may include gray material or material that is widely circulated but may not have been published, e.g., studies commissioned from private organizations, academic dissertations, which may be officially confidential. So, very often it is paper sources that will provide the proof you seek. We call this following the paper trail. Have you ever heard about following the paper trail? Like where it started and where it's going. Yes. So you can follow the paper trail. So, but investigative journalists face problems when seeking paper evidence. That is, perhaps the journalist does not know if the evidence exists, or perhaps public records are disordered and difficult to search, or perhaps there are no freedom of information laws that allow the media to conduct paper research. Do you know the laws that govern media in Malawi? Access to information. Have you heard about that one? Yes. So we can use that one here to pin down the government or authorities to release the documents. So one important piece of initial research in an investigative story is to discover what documents are used in the field you're investigating, where and how they are ordered or stored, and how they can be accessed. If advance permissions are necessary, you will need to do this early in your research, since official permits can take weeks and months to come through. Do not overlook obvious paper sources, directories, and phone books. So, patience, isn't it? Don't expect that you go today and you get what you're looking for. It takes time. Okay. Then digital sources, these include information on the web and digitally stored records. Searching for these sources does not require extraordinary skills. The amount of information available online is dazzling. But as with any other source, you need to verify where the information came from, as well as their credentials and possible motives. Okay? You need to check what officials are writing about themselves and how friends and family describe them. That means you are going on Facebook now on personal account, isn't it? But do remember that the web is relatively uncontrolled. Almost anyone with access can post almost anything, including complete fabrication. In addition, web information often stays online for a long time, sometimes long after it has become outdated. So always check the most recent sources for this. Okay. For further help, you can download a free copy of the verification handbook published by the that's European Journalism Center. European Journalism Center is very important. This is where you can get a lot of information if you want to be in touch with. Okay. So it provides tools, techniques, and step-by-step guidance or guidelines on how to deal with digital content. So these are the different sources, three types of different sources. But there is another one which is very important. It can be a fourth one. We call it crowdsourcing. Ever heard about this term? Crowdsourcing. Mm. Okay. So this new tool combines human and digital sources. Okay. Yes, crowdsourcing. It involves media outlets drawing readers to investigative stories by inviting them to contribute. Okay. Um, so you are asked to contribute. Ask your okay. Okay, let's see this one. Let's look at the source, human source. Useful strengths and possible threats. Human, the it gives life and authenticity to the story. Okay, that's a human source. And interviewing does not require high-tech sources. Accounts of first-hand experience make a story convincing. That's a strength. But it has a weakness. People have biases, prejudices, and may lie. So, may only provide anecdotal evidence. Ensure your sources are representative, not only one or two. Also, people may be victimized for talking to the press. Think about how to protect them as well. Okay? Then we have paper. It provides hard evidence, yes, and provide history and context. So secondary sources broaden background research beyond what you can tackle yourself. Primary sources, e.g., bank records, are on the record and reliable. Okay, so background research and on the record, they can be reliable. But their weakness that may be protected by privacy laws. So censorship, etc., and hence hard or slow to access. May need specialist knowledge to understand. as well. Eh? You may have an understanding. Can produce a dead or over academic story with no live voices. A, a dead story which has no life. What else? Next is the digital can do all the above depending on what is being retrieved. Can do both paper and human. Eh? And its strength is it can do it all from your computer, including accessing sound and video. Information is posted fast and from a huge range of national and international sources. But its weaknesses is that can produce dead story, security threats of. Do you understand what we mean by dead story?
Dead story. Okay, the story that you can't prove.
No, that's a dead story.
So it's
When we say dead story, it's a story where there are no human voices. A live story is a story where people are talking. There are people there talking. Okay, you understand that?
yeah.
So security threats of the internet, it's an issue when you get also the verification of the huge amount of rumors and hoaxes in the internet can be difficult. Okay. Okay. Um, Another area that we need to understand is when you want to obtain data sources that are difficult to access, there may be laws in place to help you. Like in Malawi, eh? Which laws is that? They have laws in the constitution that help free access to information, public information, that isn't it? Not an individual person as you go to Bandira and say, give me information. It's a, no, no, eh? But we're talking about public information, right? Uh-huh. So, in every country, these laws differ not just in their titles but also in their content, which makes global advice on legal regulation difficult to give. But remember that you should conduct some research about the laws in your country before you start investigations. Eh? Creating a network of sources. You have to have a network of sources. Your research may produce a complex or even contradictory results about the best sources of your story. Build up contacts tree or mind map until you find people you need. Eh? For the planning process, you should make an advanced list of the sources that you will use to obtain both evidence and background information. Okay.
From the planning stage.
Yes. Who is going to be talking? Where are going to get this source? Eh? Just today, anybody can hear anything and call it a story. Eh? That's not about journalism. Journalism, you need to have sources who can tell you information that can be verified. Yes? So on your mind map, draw arrows to connect sources and intend background expertise with findings that support them. Draw other kinds of connections. For example, jagged lines between pieces of evidence that okay. It's up to you how you come up with the sources, but how they link to each other, right? Because you don't want to forget, you need to draw a mind map. A mind map in your mind, or you can draw it on paper. Okay. Uh, I think let's stop there for now, so that when we meet next time on this, we should continue on. That's tomorrow, right? We continue on creating a network of sources. Okay. Okay. So.